Hey, how is it going? Got a few people here for the usual Friday night stream. It's got myself and Danny and Clint and Michael, and I think Jeff might be joining us. He usually joins us a little bit late, so hopefully he will be around for that on this fine Friday night of Golden Week where there's absolutely nothing to talk about. So hey guys.
Hello.
So,
All right, well that's the stream. That covers our entire range of topics. Um, Genuinely, what's going on? There's like nothing to talk about.
Manga's off for the week. Manga took a trip, vacation.
yeah, just been reading old stuff since there's no new stuff. Been rereading The World God Only Knows because for a while when it was every other week, that just killed the pacing for me. So I'm kind of going back over it.
You not much of a weekly reader? Do you prefer like if you have the option, not to say you don't read things weekly, but like if you had the option between two scenarios, would you prefer to marathon something over reading it weekly?
It depends, but it seems like usually series are better read in a marathon because man, the arc with Aurora in The World God Only Knows weekly, I feel like that lasted forever. But marathon, it's a bit better.
Hmm.
I think, at least in the pacing.
I guess it kind of depends on the series. I mean, I'm trying to think of all the series. Like for me, Kami no Mi, very much One Piece. Bakuman was the same way. Series that stimulate thought I think are really great week to week because if you're part of the right fan communities, or even like do what we do, like critical analysis and discussing like theories and hypotheses and whatnot of where the story could go and how characters are like interconnected and affected and all that, you get a real chance to go like really in depth. If you're doing it like weekly, you get to intensely pour over individual chapters for a long time, which kind of I think it like connects me to something more. I don't know if you guys are the same way.
Yeah, that makes sense. It does depend on the series, I think. Like, even if like monthly series, like Claymore has a lot of action in it, and that is painful to read like a month at a time. It's a much better marathon read usually, I feel. And yeah, so I agree with you. It depends on the series.
Much
Yeah,
better.
it definitely depends on the series. I mean, I remember reading Full Metal Alchemist month to month, and even though that was a monthly and I loved it, like it never felt wrong. Like it never felt like I got too little or too much. Each month, I think she paced it really well.
Yeah, monthlies are just kind of rough in general, honestly, except for that. But Full Metal Alchemist was just so good that it kind of it bypasses the entire conversation about that. It's the quality is so high, the little details don't even matter. But there are definitely some series that are the opposite of that. I distinctly remember when I caught up on two different Sunday series, Kenichi and Zettai Karen Children. I enjoyed them both a lot more than I have now come to enjoy each of them to varying degrees, obviously, as I read them weekly. I don't know, some of them just work like very much the opposite, I think. ZKC, man. Uh,
I definitely say that for maybe like the angsty romance manga. It's better to marathon that because it really likes to keep you on that cliffhanger every week. So, I mean, not that I expect any of the manly listeners to read any of those types of series, but that's been my experience.
Kimi Macho was not fun. Good Ending was not fun. Like in the midst of them, all the
Mhm.
angst and whatnot is just excruciating to get through. What do you guys think about that? Actually, not the angst, but you just made a comment about um, like how it always has to end on cliffhangers and whatnot. I get that with the way the medium is, you always have to entice readers to check back next week because it's a business, and there's no guarantee. Like for us, we just click links online or whatever. It's easy. These people have to go out and buy magazines every single week, or get the subscription, of course. Uh, do you guys like the way that like every single chapter of every series has to end on at least a mini cliffhanger?
I think it can be done in an unobtrusive way. Like I think we can have like instead of cliffhangers, it can just be at a point where there's a good deal going on, or that like there's a good bit of action, or like, or just like a point where you would want to see the next page. I think it can also absolutely destroy a series for a while, like it was doing in Hueco Mundo with Bleach, where it was like a twist at the end of every single chapter.
Yeah. Reborn. Reborn was like that. Same problem. Just it makes it feel like it's like the series is just stuttering its way to the next thing. It's always about, find out next week, find out next time. Like, well, I've been reading it for weeks and months and even years. Like, when is next time? When am I finally going to learn whatever it is and actually feel satisfied?
I think there's a difference between like a twist and a cliffhanger. It was like, I think it's fine when the chapter is like, oh man, I have to read the next chapter like right now because I really want to see what happens next. But it's like, this person is your father every single week, then it would get a little tedious.
It would get especially tedious if that was the exact plot twist every single week. Every single week, it was always some new person being revealed as the main character's father.
If they could make that work, though, that would be a series I want to read.
Speaking of main characters' fathers, Hunter x Hunter.
We went through this already. Please don't. No. Yeah. I don't know. You don't have any thoughts. I mean, you weren't here for that last week. Do you have any thoughts on the whole Hunter x Hunter coming back news? Because I know you don't really read it, but you are, fundamentally aware of it.
Yeah. I still just think that, like, it's going to come back and it's going to be great because Hunter x Hunter is, and people are going to go nuts over it and, start reading it again for however long it's back, maybe like 2 or 3 weeks. And then it'll go on hiatus again. But in the meantime, while it's running, I'm still just like a little put off by how casually Gon's dad was introduced.
Yeah. Not cool at all. So, talking about Jump a little bit, we always check back on these, so we might as well keep checking back on these. Jump Report, the new series, Tokyo Wonder Boy, is already going to be canceled. Great job.
Which one was that?
Soccer.
Oh.
Football. Yeah, depending on whether you are correct or not with your terminology.
I'm sure everything else will soon be canceled as well.
Yeah, probably.
Blanket statement, just everything in Jump is going to be canceled except for One Piece.
And Kochikame. Come on.
So something was brought up in regards to that that I noticed as other people, discussing. Whereas, Tokyo Wonder Boys, the way it started the characters. It didn't start them in a typical middle school or high school, football club, as it would normally any other sports series where you follow the sports team of the school. Instead, it was players who were already participating in a league, and it brought up an interesting question as to, all these sports series that we follow. Do they have to really follow this whole high school team or school team in order to be relatively successful, or to appeal to the reader?
I would have said that it was a good thing that it was stepping outside the boundaries, but now it's being canceled. So I think your point's probably valid. Like, is it going to sell if it's not set in that very specific school setting with like the exact kinds of plots we know, like tournaments and rival school and all that?
Well, like, as much as we 20-somethings would love to see a series not set in a high school, the people who are buying the magazines are Japanese high schoolers and middle schoolers. So I guess it would kind of make sense that those would be more popular than one not set in a high school. I mean, I don't know. I understand how Japan votes for their series that are popular, really, so I'm not too surprised.
It's kind of strange, though, because I can only speak for myself, but I imagine that a lot of people must act in the same way. I don't go out of my way to only buy or watch or read or consume things that I can exactly relate to. I don't only, I'm almost 29 years old. I don't only read or watch things that have protagonists that are exactly almost 29 years old. you would think that, I mean, to use soccer slash football as an example, you would think, given the popularity worldwide of the sport and of particular leagues and teams in the sport, you would think that someone would say, no, I'm not going to make mine about like a school tournament. I'm going to make mine about a team in the Premier League or something like that. It's kind of unusual. I mean, maybe it's different. Maybe it's just a cultural difference that they're kind of more egotistical and want everything to be about them. But I don't get that. I want to read a variety of things.
Maybe in this case, it's just that sports series aren't popular in general.
Well, it yes and no. In Jump, with very rare exceptions and for very particular reasons, they tend not to do that well. When they do well, they do very well, and sometimes it's based on what audience they are catering to. When you look at Haikyuu, when you look at Prince of Tennis, Kuroko no Basket, sometimes there's a built-in target audience there. It's not exactly about the sport as much necessarily, or you have Slam Dunk or some of the older titles that operated under different demographic rules like Play Ball or whatever, and those are just that's just general appeal. Same thing we were talking about with FMA just a second ago. It's so good it totally supersedes the entire argument. But yeah, I wouldn't say that sports series aren't popular. It just doesn't work in Jump. But sports series are way more popular in Japan than they are here, at least. Here they don't sell, which is too bad.
It seems like when they released Cross Manage in the digital Jump, it was relatively popular among American audiences, but it always ended up in the near bottom of the popularity polls. I think it's a real shame, honestly, that I think it was objectively a pretty good series, even if it was a little slow on getting to the actual sports action. I was thinking, if that doesn't do well, then we have trouble seeing how a new sports series could do well.
I mean, it was about lacrosse. It's a bit tough to reach an audience there. Lacrosse is not exactly the world's most popular sport.
Yeah, that's true.
I think that it couldn't really help but to be more popular in America than it was in Japan, because here people have at least heard of lacrosse.
I think, I mean, we thought the same stuff about Haikyuu when we first heard about that. Like, I remember when we just heard rumors of it, like, volleyball series? Seriously? And that's blown up. So I think that's proof that, like, I almost think that the sport doesn't even really matter. Like, you'd think soccer series would have a huge edge because it has way more fans, but I think it's based entirely on the merit of the manga itself, and not even about the sport, not even about what kind of manga it is. It's just like things that people like will rise to the top, no matter what the subject matter is.
Good things are good, yeah.
Also, fangirls liking the boys.
Well, hey, let's not just limit it to fangirls, okay? Come on.
Hey, the fanboys didn't pull through for Cross Manage.
They just weren't doing a good enough job with the series, all right?
I guess not, no.
The reason I read Kuroko every week. I mean, Clint, you're totally right. Like, obviously the cream rises to the top no matter what, and Haikyuu is a perfect example of that because I wouldn't say that it rose to the top on the strength of volleyball action, which is not to say that the volleyball action is bad, but for me, at least, the series didn't kick into high gear until after they faced their first setback and had to really, like, each of the characters had to face some kind of challenge to overcome. All of the character interaction then became the centerpiece. And character interaction and character growth and all that really has nothing to do specifically with a sports series. You can do that in any series. Sports creates its own unique challenge for that to take place, but yeah, it's more about how well are you writing scenarios, how well are you writing your characters, and Haikyuu does a fantastic job of that. And I hear the anime is very good too. Samu tells me that. Hi, Samu, by the way. I did see your tweet. Samu says that the Haikyuu anime is apparently quite good, which can only help. I mean, look at what happened to Kuroko after the anime exploded. What's next? What's the next thing to get an anime?
If I had to say, it's probably Assassination Classroom.
Assassination Classroom, yeah, is a dead shot for it.
Well, it already had an OVA, so it's kind of, I guess, tried to make it be an anime. And possibly, Shokugeki no Soma. Seems like another obvious anime pick, though I don't know when it could happen. I mean, looking at the lineup, those are the only two that come to mind. some things like Saikikusa no Sai Nan. I think that already had an anime of sorts, but it was kind of like flash animation shorts. I mean, you can do that with a comedy, so that's not too far out. World Trigger, maybe. That's kind of just trucking along. So it probably wouldn't be too far out there to get something. I mean, unless it's another situation of it just being popular but not popular enough.
Mm-hmm.
It's really hard to say.
I'm still really bewildered by the super early Nanatsu no Taizai greenlight.
Yeah. I just don't know. I forget who was it. It was Jeff, I believe, that brought up the idea. I think it was on Beamcast last week. Brought up the notion that instead, like my concern was if what if it ends up being one of these super long series like Fairy Tail, One Piece, Naruto, Bleach, like all those kinds of series, like the big traditional long form shonen action series. If that's what they intend to do with it, you either are going to have terrible pacing or terrible filler, one or the other, and neither situation is good. But again, I hope I'm right in remembering that it was Jeff, and please correct me if I'm wrong, suggested that what if it's just, if they do a Magi with it, and just do like a 26-episode season, and then wait for a long time, and then, whenever there's more than enough content, you'll do another season of that. Could that work?
I think it could. I mean, obviously, there's a precedent for it. I hope they get a better voice actor than what they had for Aladdin.
Yeah. I still don't get that. Not at all. Bob Squab checking in to suggest. Oh yeah, that's a good call. I'm wondering where the Yamada-kun anime is. They've already got the full plot laid out. That's a good point. Where is that?
It seemed like they were. Maybe I'm wrong, but didn't they kind of say they were getting one in the scanlations? Like usually there's some kind of ad for whatever. Like in Kami no Mi, they had like say we're getting an anime. I thought maybe Yamada had one too, but maybe I was misreading it.
I don't think so.
No, yeah, it already got a PV. And,
Oh, is that what it was? Okay.
Well, it's gonna get an anime at some point. It hasn't been announced. They just made a promotional video for it in August. And then that's just instead sitting there for some reason.
It's one of those pretty good ones. Like, do you remember? It kind of feels the same way as this. Do you remember that Codebreaker anime?
Yeah, well, that actually happened.
Yeah, but I mean, it didn't really. I mean, it did, but who cared?
That's true.
Did you watch that?
Maybe got some people to watch it. Yeah, really hard to say.
Yeah.
How popular is Seraph of the End?
It seems to be doing very well in Square, but I don't. Again, it's one of those World Trigger situations where I think it's popular with its audience, but I don't think it's popular enough to become an anime. I mean, considering the subject matter and stuff, it's supernatural, it has vampires, I think. So like
vampires, yeah.
Yeah, so like it could very well get an anime, but I mean you don't really see that many things from Square get made into anime either. So.
Speaking of Square, I saw that Watsuki he's going on hiatus now. It's kind of the same thing as EKC and the same thing that Bleach did. It's hiatus now briefly. Later in the year, come back, finish up Embalming, and then he's going to do a Shishio Makoto spinoff from Kenshin.
Right.
Any thoughts on that? I think it's kind of interesting, but it has a touch of the Toru Fujisawa about it, where like every once in a while Toru Fujisawa will go do something else and try to get anything else to his name, and it always fails, and then he will always go back to doing another GTO spinoff. It kind of feels the same with Watsuki. Like he's never been able to really do anything else that's worked, and then he'll keep revisiting Kenshin.
Yeah, my thoughts are I would kind of like another good series from him instead of a spinoff.
Well, I wonder how much of that is actually him creatively wanting to do this, and how much it is to have something out there that is Kenshin related in order to promote the live action movie that is going to be coming out soon. So they tend to time these particular moves every once in a while. I mean, they were also doing it again a while ago with the re-release when they were doing it again. I'm not entirely sure what what the nature of it was, but they were doing Kenshin again, and then that was like to promote the anime that was coming out.
Right.
How was that movie, by the way, the first one?
I didn't see it.
Me neither.
I saw it. It was passable. They actually like the special effects weren't like cringeworthy, which is what I was worried about. It had a little bit of budget behind it to where they could do special effects for the sword fights and it looked alright. Um, and then a lot of the character interaction was pretty true to the manga, which obviously has some like a little bit of awkwardness to it because you can't directly translate character interactions like that from a manga to live action. But
Mhm.
I mean, you accept it, and given that it was an adaptation, it was a pretty good movie.
Speaking of live action, we totally forgot to mention this, that Simon points out Yamada-kun did already have a live action adaptation, and he suggests that it seems that the author did not want an anime for her series,
Oh, I guess that
which
solves that one.
kind of kind of works better, really. Because honestly, if your series is adaptable to live action, if it works in that sense to a live action drama, those can take off in a totally different and more respectable sort of way. So I can kind of see that. I don't know, if you have the option, why not?
Yeah,
Um,
because you can get like big name actors on your project, then you can get like a more casual audience, which is what everyone wants at the end of the day, is a less niche audience.
get that casual money, get Crip on it.
Well, I'll ask this though: what does better, live action or anime adaptations of materials?
Live actions.
Yeah.
Really?
If I had, because the audience for live action movies is generally bigger, or it casts a wider net than anime would. Uh, Mainly because live action adaptations kind of cater more to the people who watch dramas. They tend to get pretty prolific actors from people's dramas and whatnot to act in these live action movies, be they the Phoenix Wright live action movie or like other adaptations of like the Verona Kenshin movie as well. And generally that's what live action movies are all about. Be they comic adaptations or video game adaptations. They're not exactly for the niche audience that the original content was made for. They're to bring out the original, like I guess, a semblance of the original content, because usually they're not one to one. Though in Japan they tend to be closer to the actual original material. But it is in order to cast a wider net on the casual audiences who don't know what this original project is. And it is in that way that it caters to different types of people who do not watch anime. Otherwise, it would be a completely different like beast, because they're both very different mediums, live action and anime. And right now, live action is at the forefront of I would assume, their media, because anime is generally a majority of it right now is relegated to late night time slots where not that many people watch it. So yeah.
Maybe I'm just being a little too U.S. centric, but like I ask that because when I think of a live action adaptation of an anime or a manga, nothing comes to mind. Like I've heard of the Death Note one, but that's only because I think the only people that would get that is if they've already seen the anime or read the manga.
The Death Note one, which is completely terrible.
Oh my god, it's so bad.
It really is bad. But I mean, you have to think of it like it is over here, like how Cartoon Network has moved to like having a lot of live action shows on because live action does better over here than cartoons do. It's exactly the same in Japan. Live action does better than anime do. It caters to just a much wider audience, and yeah, it's just seen as more acceptable. You get like actors that people know. You can have your Demi Lovato's on screen.
Yes, please, thank you. I mean, if you were asking Jeff, because your question was kind of ambiguous, like each of them answered like if it's more viable or successful. But if you were asking if it's better, like as like subjective terms of quality, that's very much a mixed bag, probably edging a bit towards anime. But there are good live action adaptations. I mean, I mentioned GTO earlier. I love the first live-action GTO. Do not like the second one, the more recent one, the 2000 whatever it was, but the old one, it was like 2012 or 13, whatever the new one was. But the old one, starring I can't remember the guy's name, Takeshi something, I think. The one with Poison as the intro. That one is awesome. It's totally different. I mean, as an adaptation, it's pretty garbage. It's names and like general scenarios, but like half the plot lines are mushed into one another. It's one plot line in the live action comprises 3, 4, 5 different plot lines in the manga, but as just an enjoyable experience, it's great. And there are other ones, none that are immediately coming to mind, but I've seen a few that are pretty good. Gokusen is kind of fun.
I've heard that the Lovecom one's pretty good, but that's shoujo, not shonen.
Right. That works very well too. Shoujo to live action, shoujo josei to live action is quite good.
Those are usually about drama anyway, or the humor's usually not too physical. It's more like repartee or witty banter or something. So.
Nadame Cantabile was quite good as a live action. Very good stuff.
Oh, that had live action? I didn't
Yeah.
see that.
Yeah, it was good. You should check that out. I mean, I know, not to get too far off of our purpose as a site, but, it's not like we're completely ignorant of that stuff. The Nadame Cantabile live action was quite good.
A proud reader of many shoujo series, and I regret nothing.
No, it's cool. I didn't found the site to decry other demographics. It wasn't like I'm picking shonen because everything else is terrible. It's just picking something because I happen to know it.
We could call it Death to Shoujo Beam.
Shonenisbetter.com.
No, I really want to. Sorry, go ahead.
No, there are other sites. I mean, everyone. There just happen to be specialty sites for different things. I remember back during the Anablog tourney, I kind of found our mirror site, our bizarro shoujo site called heartofmanga.com, where she basically does the same exact thing that we do here, except for shoujo. So it's just each thing deserves specialized coverage. So why not?
Is that still around?
Heart of Manga? It is and it isn't. She just came back from hiatus, having had some kind of personal complications. So well wishes to her, obviously, and hopefully she'll get back on track reviewing a lot of stuff. Apparently, like the shoujo market's kind of dried up over here, which is really sad to see. So hopefully that'll turn around. I had a thought earlier. Maybe we could talk about this. I mentioned Watsuki and what he was doing, and it's really weird for me to think about like his legacy and his place, because he had a huge series. Kenshin's a big deal. And he spawned 2 other big deal artists. One of them, the biggest, Oda, was his assistant. And then also Takei, Hiroyuki Takei, the author of Shaman King and the others, Yumbor and Ultimo and whatnot. But basically Shaman King. So, I mean, he's definitely respectable, and I'm not trying to say he's, like, bad. But at the same time, because he's just kind of disappeared off to Square with embalming and just not really succeeded, like, he doesn't stand out as being as memorable as a lot of the older authors that we talk about. Like, when we were doing the draft game last week and, talking about, like, for example, I picked Tetsuo Ohara as my artist from Fist of the North Star. You remember these big names. You remember, like, really iconic. They're, like, vividly in your mind. Like, what's Buron-san up to? I deeply respect him. I know he's going to do something good. And Watsuki's just kind of not really on that same level. Do you guys feel the same?
Sort of, yeah. Like I'll always remember him for Kenshin. I'll never forget about him from Kenshin. But I think if he had 2 big series instead of 1 big series, I think he would then be up there in the same breath as everyone else that we would talk about. Didn't he assistant under someone pretty incredible?
I'm sure he did, and if you give me a while, I will be able to come up with a name.
It might have been like Tezuka or something. I'm not sure.
I don't think it's that. There's a bit of an age disparity there. I don't think it's that. Unless you mean a different Tezuka. Tezuka from Prince of Tennis? Did he study under him? Probably. Study underneath of him. Speaking of which, got a tweet from Samu. So where's Yaoi Beam? I'll work on it.
I think that's where the majority of the shoujo market's going, unfortunately. Because that's what it seems like from the memes and whatever I see online about manga. It seems like Yaoi has its own really niche but intense audience, and not much else. I don't know.
Vocal minority, really. And the answer is Obata. He was an assistant to Obata.
Okay, yeah.
I haven't read Kenshin, but it sounds like it's not really unheard of that someone has a really big hit and isn't really able to move on from it. It can be sometimes hard to have that second series or book or whatever really find a market.
It's just really weird. It's kind of sad in a way to look at that happen. I mean, to me, Fujisawa, GTO, it's just so sad to see him constantly go back. And I mean, there's a limit, obviously, because he's still making money. You know, he's not out on the street because he couldn't find another hit. He's making money off of going back to that same hit time and again. But it's kind of like I picture the one-hit wonder band that tours off the hit. It's like Rick Springfield touring the world with Jesse's Girl and other songs that no one wants to hear. No one goes to Rick Springfield concerts to hear anything but Jesse's Girl. Sorry, Rick Springfield fans. But it's kind of just like that. It's like, it doesn't work really for anyone. It doesn't work for us because it's just like, well, that's kind of sad. He has to keep going back to this even though I like it. It's, do something different. And surely, like, as an artist, it's got to hurt for him to have to go back to that constantly. And you see it elsewhere, too. I don't mean to just pick on Fujisawa. Watsuki, to me, is kind of also similar in that way to... I've just blanked on the name. You got to be kidding me. Masami Kurumada, that's it. It's Saint Seiya. He did have Ring Nikakero, obviously, but yeah, I mean, he's the Saint Seiya guy. And what has he really done since then, aside from Saint Seiya? Not much else.
I think where Watsuki messed up was in going to a series that's a lot more niche than his original series was.
Oh my god, what have we started? Bob Squab following on the train of thought. Shonen I Beam. Good, thank you. Appreciate that.
Oh boy.
Yeah. There's the April Fool's joke next time.
How do they know it hasn't been Shonen I Beam all along? The symbol for the site is an eye, symbolizing eye.
Ooh, man. You got to put the clues together. The content's already there. You haven't found it yet. Got to click the right links and type in the right passwords.
I expect some very interesting additions to the tier list.
It's a different tier list entirely. Samu tweets in, considering Big Time Author's second series will probably never see Oda's, I do wonder what Kubo and Kishimoto will produce. Oda has already said, I'm pretty certain, that he intends only to do One Piece and then will be done. I'm pretty sure that's on record. Kubo and Kishimoto are...
Kishimoto is going to do a series where kids play baseball with their noses pressed against glass.
Can we reenact that? I have like a candle lid. See if I can reenact this. Bench. Can't really see through that, can you? No.
Yeah, I read that one shot too. I was less than impressed.
I'm gonna pull that up. I know we've done this before. I just have to do it. It's so great. Yeah, Kubo is the one that we always. I mean, we're completely repeating ourselves here, but every one of us wants to see Kubo do something set in a school with fashion.
Yeah, I want to see him do. What was that? That idol series we got, the one where there was like a class of idols and then a class of like stylists.
Oh yeah, Himedal or Himedal.
Yeah.
Himedal. I want to see Kubo do that.
Yeah, basically. By the way, Himedal was good.
Why did it get canceled? Yeah.
Because I mean, probably not the best magazine for it to run in, honestly. But I liked Himedal genuinely. Not my favorite series, of course. Solidly good, though.
I thought it was a really welcome addition.
It wasn't set in traditional Japanese high school.
Here we go. Check it out. Every single character here has their face pressed up against a pane of glass.
And that guy's eyes are missing.
That's great.
He's got Brock eyes.
Yeah. Gets me every time. Yeah, I don't know. Second series, what could Kishimoto do? What would he be good at doing next?
Taking a nap.
I mean, he can't write a plot. He's proven that.
No.
He can't particularly draw very well.
Well, certain things. He can't draw women. He can draw beasts and like crumbling cliffs. Can he just do lemmings? He should do a series about lemmings.
Yeah. What was that? What was that game? The fighter that had like animals and dinosaurs fighting?
Primal Rage?
Yeah, he should just do a manga adaptation of that.
Sounds good. Danny, did you bug out, or have you been looking down for like a year?
No. Yeah.
Oh no, sorry about that. It's just that I'm checking on a message.
Oh, that's cool. I just wanted to make sure that you're still on the call. Was it Primal Rage or Primal Roar? Something like what? Anyway, I get the point.
But the only thing I enjoy about Naruto are maybe 2 of its side characters. So maybe you could write a series just about a couple side characters. Then I guess by definition they wouldn't be side characters anymore.
He should do a Rock Lee spinoff. Oh wait.
No, we got to do this properly. Okay, so he's going to do a series about lemmings falling off of cliffs constantly with no main character because he screws it up, or side like no secondary main character, anything, just side characters. No one is more important than anyone else. It's just a bunch of nobody lemmings falling off of cliffs, and none of them are women because he can't draw women.
He can't even draw female animals.
No.
Oh God, Kishimoto.
I look forward to this. I would rather read that than Naruto. Although, credit where it's due, the last chapter was good. Like, outright, not just good for Naruto. It was a very good chapter of anything.
I would rather read Wikipedia than Naruto.
Wikipedia on Naruto, or just, Wikipedia on the cotton gin?
Both.
Well, let's just say I've tried to read the Wikipedia page on the Arankars, and that was a trip and a half. Like, that's one of those pages where there's like a billion warnings about what's wrong with this page.
Yeah.
Like, it was. That's not uncommon, though, I think, in manga.
From Wikipedia proper, like the actual, Wikipedia.org, yes. Usually, if you're going for in-depth detail like that, you're better off going to a series-specific wiki, like bleach.wikia.com, for that, for example.
I did that, and I think I got a virus.
Okay, then. How did that happen? I go there all the time.
I don't know.
Are you sure you actually went to the Bleach Wikia? It wasn't some site masquerade? How many naked pictures of Hitsugaya were on that website?
One too many.
That's impossible.
Sorry, I'm not a Japanese middle school girl, aka Bleach's target audience.
That is your own fault. Yeah, maybe that's an interesting thing to look at. Like, kind of glance at some people here that are going to be ending soon, and what could they potentially do next. So we talked about Oda's not going to do one, and even if he could do absolutely anything. So it's kind of pointless to say what he would do. Kubo and Kishimoto, Kishimoto, I have no idea. Genuinely, like, troll answers aside, I have no idea what he could do. He's not a talentless author. Like, all the kidding and criticism aside, he has talent. I just don't know how he would apply it to something else. Kubo, super easy, do a fashion school. That's so far up his alley, it's not even funny. But, like, we talked about Kaminomi, what other series are ending that we could then look forward? Claymore's ending soon-ish.
I think he's an intelligent enough author that he can do a wide variety of stuff. Like, his first series was Angel Densetsu, which was a very creative, smartly written high school series.
Yeah.
And Claymore isn't exactly the most unique thing in the world, but he writes it very well. So I don't know. He can do whatever he wants, and I wouldn't be surprised.
It's kind of.
I wouldn't be surprised. Sorry, I wouldn't be surprised to see it be a bit lean more towards typical high school series than high fantasy.
I do wonder. I mean, his strength lies in kind of like he does series that feel calm, even if it's action. I mean, even in Claymore, the action isn't as hot-blooded as you get in the traditional like Toriko style series, Dragon Ball wannabes and all that. It's as exciting as it is, it's presented in a more subdued sort of way, a measured kind of calm, cold sort of way, in a good way. I'm not saying that's a bad thing.
He could do a calm series about farming and Arakawa can switch to a high fantasy action series.
Oh, please. Yes. And I love Silver Spoon. I have to say that every time. It's great, but boy, do I look forward to whatever she does next. I don't know. Maybe what could Yagi do? A mystery, maybe?
I don't know. He does. I kind of like to see him do like a wandering warrior. I mean, like basically a post-apocalyptic Mad Max type of story. I kind of like to see him try to do that, but that might be a bit too similar to what he's doing right now.
So just more like Berserk than Claymore already is?
Basically.
Well, hey, Berserk without the rape, I could take that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. He could go any number of different ways. That would be interesting. What else is going to end? Kuroko's going to end sometime soon. I mean, depending on what you believe, he's either going to end it after this arc, or I Shield 21 it up and go way too long, way past its sell-by date. And I don't. Based on one sports series, I don't really know. I don't know what his strengths are genuinely. Kuroko doesn't really like speak to me in that kind of sense as to like, it's a fine story and like it achieves what it sets out to do perfectly well, but I don't really get a distinct impression of the author from it.
That author could write a shoujo after it. I'm 100% sure of that.
Yeah. I don't know. All right, what else is ending soon?
Well, what could the Orgalinos enter author do next?
Well, we did a full show on that already.
Oh boy.
Mystery series, some kind of alternative like detective series would be pretty good. Someone I forget. I think someone suggested like just another like a more straightforward romance, but like nothing too stereotypical. It couldn't be too straightforward because that's even if he could do it, it would be a waste of his talent. So that would be a bad idea.
I think he's from what I've read the World God knows. I think he's or Kaminomi. It's better. It's easier to say. I think that he's pretty good at writing character and pretty good at writing arcs, like episodic arcs. So a mystery would be pretty decent, I think.
Yeah. Beelzebub. What about Tamura? I know he's going to do his spin-off and Jump Next, which, by the way, that's just weird. That I still can't get over that.
I don't think that should happen. I think he should be trying to move on. And I would like to say that he would do something aside from a delinquent series. But delinquent authors do seem to just do delinquent series over and over again.
Yeah. It's kind of hard to say. That same kind of thing as Kuroko, not to the same extent, but I don't really, with Tamura, I don't really get the distinct impression of what his strengths are outside of what he's already done. He's good at action, and he's good at comedy, and he's good at mixing the two together, and that basically only lends itself to the kind of series he's already done.
He should do Sexy Commando 2.
Oh, yes. Where is he, by the way? That's a really good question. Where is he? I want a new series from that guy.
The author of Sexy Commando?
Yeah, and Jaguar, where's he?
I'm pretty sure he's doing something right now, but yeah.
Someone fill me in. I have no idea what this is.
Gag author, extremely funny.
Okay.
Sexy Commando is one of the funniest series I've ever read. Jaguar is also very funny, but there was less of it available when I was reading a bunch of stuff. Yeah, Usta Kyosuke. What? I remember he got married to the woman that did Enigma, right?
Doesn't seem like he's doing anything right now.
I see a one-shot that he did in 2010. And that's it, I think. That's unusual. He was such a mainstay for the longest time. I'm very surprised that he hasn't yet done something new.
Oh, I remember now. Right. So, I believe there's a one-shot that I think it was in the previous issue or in the current issue. Or the issues that's to come. It's a double issue. Yes, that's the first one. But he's teaming up, or at least the way that it was described, is that he's teaming up with a bunch of other gag manga authors to do a one-shot of some kind. But I'm not entirely sure what became of it. It was recently, yeah. It was with also the author of Inumaru Dashi and Gag Manga Biori and and
World
uh,
Trigger, right?
who?
That's the guy that writes World Trigger.
He's writing World Trigger?
I'm pretty sure that's the same guy, isn't it?
That guy writes comedy.
I'm pretty sure. Isn't World Trigger written by the guy that did Inumara Dashi?
No, World Trigger's written by the guy who did
Really? Oh, okay, yeah. What
yeah,
is the guy?
Super Dog, Brillianto.
We're so prepared for this.
Yeah,
But yeah, so that one shot is a thing that happened recently. Not much else I can say about that. No. Not really. I haven't really seen what became of it. I'm not entirely sure what it was even called.
right. All right, yeah. I mean, to my credit, like Inumara Dashi, Kashikoken Brillianthal, not the most distinct series between each other in the world. Yeah, that's kind of weird. We had a bunch of gag authors in Jump, not necessarily all at the same time, but they've kind of just all gone. It's odd.
Sket Dance is over, right?
Yeah, but Sket Dance wasn't exactly a gag manga.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a difference between comedy and gag.
It felt pretty gag to me.
Really?
Well, gag, I guess for me would be something more along the lines of like Bobobo.
Yeah.
Mm.
Think like more absurd, random, like Cromartie High School is gag, for example.
The Sket Dance author is one of the ones that has a one-shot coming out, right?
The one shot already did come out. It's just that nobody has scanlated it.
Yeah.
Right.
Is it still that we only have gotten Peach Pluck?
No, we have gotten Peach Pluck and we have gotten Kiramano's one shot, whatever that was called. I forgot.
Oh,
what it was.
good. The one with like the weirdo Final Fantasy chibi giant heads.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so the very odd thing about I actually did read that one.
Okay.
It was called Nemuri Netaro Appears. And it was so it touched upon it's kind of like the fantasy thing that you would expect, which has to do with mainly people in their dreams. It's like a sleep world basically, and it seems like she's come up with a lot more diverse monster designs. Possibly after having to draw aliens and whatnot in her previous work, ED Live, or I believe that's the one. So but it still seemed kind of Reborn-esque. Whereas you have this male lead who is, I mean, he's not exactly Suna, but he's also kind of useless until he transforms into a Bishonen character. At the very least, the main character seemed to be a girl. But it was interesting in its in the design aspects, but the story was kind of lackluster. It has some interesting ideas though.
Well, that's cool at least, but come on, that's just the same thing. Okay, Suna didn't become Bishonen, but the whole useless until transformation, and of course she didn't pioneer that. But to go back to the one trope that you have massively used, come on, do something a bit different.
So back to what I just had a thought about the Beelzebub author. I guess my first thought was I'd like to see him do a gag series, but apparently what I think is a gag series isn't really a gag series. I kind of like to see him draw something a bit on the lines of Sket Dan, because I think he's good at comedy, so I'd like to see him do some more comedy.
I mean, I think he could very well do gag. I mean, a lot of the chapters from Sket Dance, every once in a while, did kind of go into this, did kind of get absurd when it tried to do some sci-fi things for no reason whatsoever. And those were also always enjoyable chapters.
A chapter of the year was that sports festival that involved pyramid towers.
Yeah, it just like goes off the wall, and then that's pretty much like what gag manga, I guess I would classify under. Just it has a certain level of absurdity to it.
Hmm. So I guess I'm just sort of lacking in my gag series. I'll have to check out Sexy Commando.
Sexy Commando is great. Jaguar is also very funny, but you may not necessarily be able to get your hands on all of it. I'm a bit behind on checking up to see that one. Bobobo is very funny. You can get that one, I think, officially, can't you? Is that fully licensed, or did they stop?
I don't know about the manga, but I do know about the anime, which was actually released recently.
Okay.
Or it was license rescued. I'm pretty sure by Discotheque.
Cool. That's a funny one. It's parody of Fist of the North Star kind of series. Very funny. Trying to think of what's another good. I mean, Cromartie is extremely funny. The anime is great. So if you want to check it out that way, it's one of those anime series that the episodes are all. It's like 15 minutes with commercials, so they're actually like 11 or 12 minutes. So it's not at all an investment of your time. It's very funny.
Okay.
Gag stuff is there. It's good.
Gag stuff.
Yeah. I mean, gag manga Biori
Yeah.
kind of goes without saying. That's a tough thing to get right, though. You see a lot of it that just falls completely flat. But some of them we just don't get, frankly, because a lot of that comes in the form of yonkoma, like the 4-panel comic strips, which we rarely get those translated. But there are some good ones out there. I don't read it, but I know some of you guys read it, and I know, Clint, you've watched it, if not the rest of you. SYD is not gag, it's just comedy, right?
It's just comedy. It's in the same vein as Muromi-san.
Okay. That's also... I should clarify. Seitokai Yakuin Domo and Namiuchi wa no Muromi-san. It's like a mermaid thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Haven't checked those. Yeah, comedy in general, and then I think gag in particular, because you're going so far deliberately off the deep end, trying to be weird and crazy, and it can so easily go past being humorous in that sense, and towards something like attention getting, and just trying to be dumb for the sake of it, rather than doing something as a craft. Because even though it seems like, oh, I'm so random, haha, there's actually a lot of craft behind it to get the joke timing right and the punchline timing right and all that. And we have a new friend. Hey, Jeff.
Hey, guys. What did I miss?
Basically everything.
Oh, sorry.
Talking about gag series right now. I haven't read any, so we're just talking about what some good ones are. What makes them work.
Yeah, we've been talking about what current authors could potentially do after their series that are about to finish. Talking about good gag series. Talking about Kishimoto drawing male lemmings falling off of cliffs. The usual. Anything on that? To add to that great concept?
Yeah, you stuttered a bit. The audio stuttered a bit there, so all I heard at one of those points was Kishimoto falling off a cliff. And
good enough. Okay, you got the gist. Good. Not even close, but it's fine. Yeah, we were talking, one of the big, I guess, topic for tonight, and we're not going to take this stream too much longer, because, I mean, everyone knows, it's Golden Week, there's very little for us to say, and there's not really much point in doing a recap, excuse me, boy, asthma. Not much point doing a recap show, because there's little. I mean, we could talk about last week's Big Three, but what's the point of that? We were talking about, of the series that are coming to an end soon-ish, what their authors could potentially go on to do. Obviously, you were part of the big discussion, Jeff, about like what Wakaki could do in the future. So that's not we don't need to repeat that. But like Kubo, Kishimoto, Tamara Ryuhei of Beelzebub, for example, if he weren't doing the spin-off from Jump Next, what he could do, and the author of Kuroko no Basket, Fujimaki Tadatoshi. So Rosario just finished. Could that author go on to do something different?
I think so. Part of me does feel like with Rosario, it's sort of like the Negima thing where the author wanted to do... No, it's sort of like Negima where the author wanted to do one kind of series, but he had to make the series like it was because he was told to do other things. With Rosario Vampire, I feel like... I forget the name of the mangaka, but I feel like over time they just sort of almost outgrew the original premise of Rosario. Like it went in a different direction, and it seemed like they preferred that direction for most part, aside from the last chapter, which sort of went backwards. But I feel like their next series could like go away from that and focus more on like action or possibly more seinen, I guess.
Right.
The current reminds me of Berserk in a way. Like getting a little away from Shonen. It's like the beginning of the series is like a rape-filled fest of gore, violence, and desperation. Now it's more like a Final Fantasy thing with slightly less rape. So it almost feels like he sort of grew up a little bit. It's like, I'm not sure I want my kids reading quite this much or something.
Right. I'm just kind of having a poke around of, kind of forgotten series. I'm just wondering what happened to some of these people. You remember Hoketsu no Shinigami? Whatever happened to her? Aimoto Sho. She just disappeared off the face of the earth. Do you even remember that series? Anyone?
I don't think I ever read that.
Me neither.
I mean, it went pretty long. 10 volumes is nothing to scoff at. But I think if anything, like those are one of those series that kind of just coasted along for a while. I would imagine going on for a couple of years, and it. I mean, it never really caught my attention. It was kind of just it was just there. But it certain. I mean, whether it was because there were other series that had to go before it, or just was safe because of the many series that I'm pretty sure a lot of series weren't really catching on around that time, anyways. So it wasn't all that. It definitely tried something with like the way that it's looking. It was something of a supernatural series. So it did go somewhere, but it just kind of just flew under the radar for me. And I didn't really get that much out of. I mean, also off the previous author's previous series, Muddy. These two things. It's kind of hard to assume that she would try to do something supernatural again in the same vein. So I can't really see where she can go from there.
Jump kind of always has those kinds of series, doesn't it? Where it's not like they run a decently long time, 2 or 3 years, but it's not at all on their own merit. It's just because there are a bunch of new series constantly introduced that are all worse. Kind of like World Trigger right now. It was the same with Enigma, although Enigma had a period of time where it was doing pretty well in the TOC, and then it just tanked. But I don't know. We always seem to get those, and Hokenshitsu was another one I thought where it's. I'm not saying it was a bad series by any means, but the fact that it lasted that long, I don't think was due at all to its own merit. I think it was because there were other series being introduced that just were way worse.
You brought up Enigma, and in the subject of authors and what are they doing next, Sakaiki Kenji, she also did another work recently. I think it was within a year or so. It was a one-shot. I forgot what exactly it was called. It was Paradise something. It's beyond me what it was actually called, but I took a look at it, and it was pretty much in a similar vein of Enigma. It had this similar imagery. The characters looked pretty much the same, and it was your mystery. I wouldn't say call it sci-fi, but it's very eerie looking, unpleasant type of series again. So I mean, I would assume that that's her niche that she seems to be well in. I would like to see it become a full series at the very least to see if she can get another crack at it. But yeah.
Raku and Jore, Paradise Rules.
Right, that's what it was called.
Yeah. I mean, I recall back in 2010 when Enigma was running, and we on old Beamcast were covering it, Clint. I loved it. I thought it was really good. I was just
Yeah, like Enigma.
yeah, yeah.
It was pretty good. I did enjoy it while it was running. I don't know, like, maybe contradicting myself from back then, but like looking back on it now, it feels like it didn't have staying power because it just didn't have like that sort of grab. Like it was good week to week because it was a mystery, but it didn't have a whole lot of like personal character to me.
That's fair. Well, I mean, does Shonen do mystery, suspense, thriller like that kind of a series well? Do you think? Because what do we have to go off here? We have like the detective classics like Conan and Kindaichi.
It does it does lose something because like one of the big draws in like a mystery thriller is like the idea that characters are going to die. And like in a shonen that's sort of removed. Like you're like characters die in shonens, but not like a bunch all the time, like just randomly. Its deaths are pretty much reserved for like big moments, and huge character development. Purely side characters, like main characters, would never get killed off.
Well, sort of. I mean, Kindaichi has death. Kindaichi is very much like not in the same vein as Conan. Kindaichi is based entirely upon like slightly more mature interpretation of those kinds of detective storylines. I'm not saying it's like a bloodbath, of course, but Kindaichi definitely is not like the tame. It's not anywhere near as tame as Conan, and I'm not trying to be critical of Conan. They're going for different things basically.
What about Death Note? It's pretty much a mystery in which we know who the bad guy is.
Well, I mean, that kind of just proves the point, I would say, because the whole mystery, or at least in this case, the whole conceit of it all was, this cat and mouse game between, Death and Light and L. And once that, concluded and it decided to continue itself, it kind of lost its, legs. And I would assume it just kept going because everything before it was strong, so it just needed to end at some point. But once that mystery, or once that established main plot was settled, it kind of lost its flair, which is also kind of what happened with Enigma as well. Once that initial, setting conflict that was rather interesting ended and its mysteries were solved, and it moved on to a second arc, it kind of just lost itself a bit.
I think. No, go ahead, Clint.
I think that's a good point, but I've always kind of wondered if the reason that Death Note continued on past the resolution of the plot between L and Light was purely based on sales. I've always wondered if it was one of those series that got pushed to go longer by the editors.
Well, no, I mean, whether that was the case or not, the fact of the matter or rather, the point that I'm trying to make is that, they probably, and I mean, in my opinion, I also agree with you. They probably did push it forward because it needs to keep going. But that's kind of the point here, because it didn't seem like it was it wasn't very. You couldn't feel it in the actual content that it was planned to go this way from the start, and that's why it kind of just fell apart, because the series Death Note was about one thing. Then when they tried to make it about something else, and in this case, because maybe because it was forced to or not, but it definitely feels forced, and that's because it just feels so awkward making that change.
It's very much the same thing as is going on right now. For those of you regular readers of the Power Rankings every week, the one series at the bottom for the last month or so, Kami-sama no Yutori ni, the As the Gods Will Series 2, is one of these kind of like deadly game, horrifying scenario, bunch of kids dying. Oh, everyone knows that kind of a series. Not exactly like a battle royale, but still like a kids precarious suspense situation, thriller, etc. Who's gonna live? And it's based exactly around that same concept, where once you clear the first mystery, the first suspense, the first thrill, whatever the initial situation is, obviously you have to come up with something to follow up on that with. And so the quality of that, obviously there's going to be, varying degrees of quality. Can you follow up on it well or not? But even if you follow up on it well 2 times, 3 times, after a while, it just invariably feels repetitive, even if each individual instance is really good. And then when they aren't really good, you get a case like now in Kamisawa no Yutori, which is just literally what happened. And I'm going to spoil a tiny bit, but not anything meaningful. I'll spoil like the construct, the context of it. Really long, very, I think, nicely done, intricately designed and interweaving game going on, kids dying, tragedy, etc. All this stuff for a pretty long arc. It ends, and the very next arc is rock, paper, scissors for your life. And it's so cheap after that kind of after that long of really tense, carefully balanced, will they, won't they, are they going to survive? It's down to not chance. I know rock, paper, scissors is not exactly a game of chance, but it's certainly far more random and unpredictable than something that's really carefully constructed. And so it's just, I don't think. Do you know what I think it is? The bigger picture here. I just think that shonen, or maybe even just manga, is not the right medium for suspense. Like, it's good as like a television show where it's meant to be episodic. It's good as a movie where you're meant to see one suspense, one mystery, whatever it is. But when you constantly have to follow it, it doesn't work. I mean, look at the long-suffering Conan fans who are just crying to get on with the story, and it just never happens because then the series will just end.
You have a point, but if we're talking about just pure mystery, I'm thinking of like Nugami Nero, and I rather enjoyed the episodic kind of mystery of every couple of weeks. And I guess it's not exactly suspense, but I enjoyed those.
Nero was different, though. Nero, I mean, it was technically a mystery series, but Nero was way more about its characters than the mysteries, honestly. And then it just changed entirely and just became an action series. So
yeah, pretty much.
Almost proving what we're all saying here right in saying that you can't continue to follow up with the same type of plot. He didn't. He eventually just switched it outright. It was action by the end. Still good, though. I love that series.
Well, I mean, I guess the way that we can look at it is the way that Conan does it seems to be at least the tried and true procedural way to do it. Like the way that the live action dramas, CSI, all these things. I mean, that show kind of just keeps going because it in a very Conan fashion, it just comes up with different things each and every time. But there are also other series that, and Conan also applies this, where while you also have the procedural part of it, there's also the bigger mystery that supposedly ties everything together, or will be looming in the background, and in Conan's case, keeps that whole actual plot portion of it like a carrot on the stick for the readers. Because when is it actually going to go back to it, and when it does, you appreciate that it did. But like, I guess that's a way of keeping your audience hostage a bit with the promise of something to come, and that way they can just keep milking you for all you can, and Conan does that very, very well.
I think for me there has to be bits and pieces given out though. Like, I think Conan would have ended by now, but if it had been continually advancing the plot at least a little bit here and there, then it would have had more readers, I think. I think more people would have not dropped it. Like, there might be a couple of us reading it who aren't reading it, and like Hayate does that for me. It's like overall a comedy series, but it has this plot behind it because I think the author has recognized that you can't just be a comedy series with no direction. It gets old. So how do you keep a comedy series or a mystery running for a long time? You have episodic chapters mostly, but with an overarching plot that you get pieces of here and there. And that's probably the correct way to do it.
And you can go, I mean, this ties back into pretty much the first thing we were talking about tonight about cliffhangers and at what point does it become tiresome. Clint, sorry to bring back bad memories, Cage of Eden. I mean, that to me, prime example of exactly what we're talking about. You can get way too carried away and just doing the same thing over and over again. So and then it becomes twofold. Then it's not just all right, I'm getting a little bit pissed off here. Can you get to the damn point already? What is it that what is this big mystery? What's the secret? Get somewhere with it. It's not only that, but then you put all your eggs in the basket of the final payoff. You're deferring everything until the very, very end. And if the ending isn't good, Cage of Eden, then the entire series is tarnished as a result.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a very risky gambit to kind of hinge everything on the ending of the series, because if people don't like your ending, then your series is screwed.
Samu tweets in, by your descriptions, it sounds like Conan and Nisekoi have the same held-back plot for their genre. I assume you mean like respective genres. Yeah, with Nisekoi, though, there's even more of established history. There's even more of a precedent for that, back to like Urusei Yatsura and Ranma One Half and whatnot, and basically just Takahashi, the author of... that's kind of just... We've been fortunate enough in other regards with other series to get series that will do a little bit of plot development, or sometimes it's not like a rom-com, sometimes it's like what Seo Koji does with Suzuka, for example, where it has a clear destined ending, and we're actually working towards that, and there may be drama or something along the way, but it's constantly making progress. But that's not really tradition as much. When you look back to what Takahashi really pioneered and hugely, overwhelmingly popularized, it is basically there's a starting point and there's an ending point, and let's fill up with meandering nothing for 10 years. That's basically what it is. So Nisekoi, the thing with Nisekoi, which we were just talking about, Michael and I, on the comments of your review, Michael, which, again, well done, it's what kind of series is Nisekoi? And I felt, and I think we all kind of felt, that it was going to be part of this new school of, oh, wow, it's actually going to do plot. It actually has the capability, and the author, we all respect the hell out of Komi Naoshi. We all know that he can do that. He's actually making progress here with these characters and with the locket and all this stuff. Come to find out, for whatever reason, if it's he's decided he wants to do this, if it's selling so well, and fair enough, if you're making money, if you're finally not being canceled for the first time, I can't blame you too much. For whatever reason, he's actually pushing it forward with the same kind of meandering, never-ending nonsense. And it's just we've had to completely switch gears in our understanding of what he's trying to do.
I've had to... It feels like Nisekoi has a logical ending point, like one big reveal. Like, what was the promise, and who did he make the promise to, if anyone specifically? It feels like he's basically taken a year-long break from any progress towards that. And now that it's finally being given, as you can read, I didn't like the way it was given. But maybe it has something to do with the anime that's coming out. Maybe he has to delay it a bit.
Maybe it has something to do with the fact that he keeps introducing more girls, and one of the new girls has a key.
I like her though. But again, as I said in my comment, I have now completely accepted the fact that this is not one of these plot-driven series anymore. Eventually it will be, but it isn't. That's not what it is. It's Torabaru. It's Ichigo 100%. It's Kimagure Orange Road to an extent. Maybe that's a little bit unfair, but you get the picture. It is one of these ones that's just going to meander. And in that sense, he has to keep it fresh. And you can't go too far the other direction either. I mean, all right, we all liked the beginning, the introduction of Nisekoi. We all liked the central plot with the lockets and the keys, and the characters are fun. Ooh, I can't wait to see who he's going to end up with. Do you really want it to just be a year-long series, 50-something chapters? Because that's all you would need, if that, for him to get through that plot.
I think a good ending is more important than lasting a long time.
Well, yes, but do you want it to be a short series, given that we're talking shonen here. Short series are not the norm. Do you think it would have been better served being a 1 or 2 year series?
I think I do want it to run for a while, because I want him to be a name. I want him to have developed like a resume for himself, so to speak. And like, as much as it hurts for it to just not have any progress chapter after chapter after chapter, it's still an enjoyable read at the worst of times. It's still a 5 out of 10. They're like passable at the worst of times.
Yeah.
Yeah, I enjoy it. Even the chapters that don't progress anything, they almost always get one laugh out of me. So I just don't want to feel like I'm wasting my time reading Nisekoi. As long as it's entertaining me, I'll be okay with it.
Well, I mean, you know, the the point that Jean made earlier is, you know, I would definitely agree with it, and also apparently it seems like certain info seems to align itself with it, in the sense that you know, Nisekoi is pretty much to just you know a different brand of entertainment, but it is definitely hits that mark. Whereas you know, things are going to happen, though obviously more substantial things clearly, since it's not as slapstick. But it's going to fill that niche of people wanting to just read something. Like you know, you mentioned it before that Hayate also does this kind of just trickling effect of every once in a while you get your plot, but then you also have to extend it with your you know, one-shot comedy things. And well, I don't read Nisekoi. It definitely seems like the author is stringing. It just keeps elongating the series more or less, and it's just if it needs to stop, then I'm pretty sure it could end whenever it needs to. So it's like you just go along for the ride for the most part in that case. And also the thing I was mentioning before was that it seems like Nisekoi and To Love Ru seem to be reaching also a certain similar kind of status in terms of sales as well. I believe it's recent. You know, To Love Ru is no slouch when it's a very high-selling series. It also seems to have sold pretty much along the same lines at this point in its lifetime. So that's also really impressive for Nisekoi. And so you mentioned about the fact that the longer this keeps going, the harder it might be to get a more like earn more of a resume, so to speak. But I think even in spite of this, it just shows how more versatile Komi is in terms of what he can write. Because before this, we did have Double Arts, which is another romance series, and also a couple of other. Yeah, should have warned you before that one. But also he has a bunch of one shots as well. Like my favorite being Apple, and like all these other things. Like he has a body of work.
Well, I was saying, I think you misunderstood. I was saying I think it's a positive thing that Nisekoi is going to run for a long time. Like if he gets a long-running series under his belt, if Nisekoi runs for 5 years or more, that looks better on him as an author. He was published in Jump for X number of years. That looks great. He can then continue on. Maybe has a bit more leniency with his next series. More people are going to be reading it from the start. He might be able to do sort of a more adventure tale oriented thing like Double Arts was.
Right, and that's pretty much what we have to take away from this. Like he might be doing something that seems very trite to some people who liked his previous works, but the fact of the matter is that he's really successful, and it's better that he be successful now and have more leeway going forward after that than him not going anywhere with the one shots because he doesn't have that big of a name yet. But now he does. Now he's getting that attention because of Nisekoi. And I guess that's one thing to be grateful for, if we want to see more of his works going forward.
Yeah. There's one other consideration to keep in mind as well, which is from the simple business aspect. And also taking a look at this, it's really easy for us to be negative and say, this is wrong, this shouldn't be publishing, I don't like this is making all these mistakes. And that's fine. I mean, I'm not saying that's illegitimate. That's worth doing. But at the same time, you have to also bear in mind the alternative. It's one thing to say, I want Nisekoi to end because it's going to help its own story, and then as a complete finished work, it will stand the test of time that much better. And I totally respect that opinion. But think about the alternative in terms of week-to-week enjoyment of reading Jump. Jump is going to have a romantic comedy, no matter what. There will be one. There might be more than one, but at the very least, there will be one romantic comedy. What is the alternative? You could have Nisekoi, or you could have something else. The known quantity here is a minimum of enjoyable. Yes, we have all echoed the same thing. It would be very nice if he would proceed with the plot a little bit more consistently, even if he doesn't get to the actual ending, to include it more often, to have fewer solely standalone episodic chapters that contribute nothing to the Locket story. But that notwithstanding, it is still a minimum of enjoyable week to week. You could have that for the foreseeable future, or you could have Unknown. You could have another Koizumi Momiji. You could have another Hatsukoi Limited slash Anedoki. With A, how much I respect Kominaoshi, and B, how much I still enjoy Nisekoi, I'll take what we have right now over the possibility of some bland, incredibly cliched, tiresome, dull drivel. I'll take this.
Yeah, I
I
think there
have
is something to be. I think there is something to be said for like consistency and all of that too. We have discussed this before. How like just because a series is like like a, no, I don't want to say average. Just because a series is like stereotypical, which we can definitely say of Nisekoi, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. And I have found that in general with Nisekoi, there are moments specifically where like I think the series is very well done. I thought the most recent there's some recent chapters with uh, with Miyamoto Ruri that I really like those, and just tell any like you said, any moment where it doesn't isn't just like an individual one shot chapters, even if it was just 2 or 3 chapter stories. I always found those to be like above average, definitely, and like if it yeah, it is like you said, if it can stay either average or above average, then overall it will come across as a fairly good series, even if there is a part of me that has to wonder if once we're done with this series, if we're actually just it was just going to be one of those things we're just going to forget somewhere down the line, and then that is a little worrying. If I don't want to run into a situation where the series ends up being so forgettable that once Komi actually comes out with something new, people just don't care. That'd be the one thing I would worry about going forward, especially if it goes on for years and years with the same formula, like we've been saying.
Yeah, I think it's already doing well enough, though. He's guaranteed a minimum of recognition at this point. I mean, the anime is doing well. The manga is selling incredibly well for a series of its genre and of its type. I think that he's already achieved a breakthrough of some kind. He could definitely get higher than that, but I think he's already taken the next step.
I have a I have a few counterpoints to make to what discussions have brought in. I like Nisekoi and I like reading it every week, but I've heard every time we talk about it, I hear like some we said to change our expectations to be something like To Love Ru or something. Well, I mean, I don't read To Love Ru. I read Nisekoi because I love the beginning of Nisekoi, and this is also that this is sort of the gateway for his next series. I don't think that's fair, like to say to me or the readers either. I mean, I don't like to see this turn into an average series just because it's the stepping stone for his next series. What I guess, not trying to sound too negative here, I like Nisekoi. It's just that I don't think I'm being unfair to say I want to see the same level of quality we've seen earlier, because I've seen it be so good. And I can see how it could be in the future so great if it decides to actually do anything with the stuff it's set up. I just get a little frustrated when it's becoming, I see it slowly becoming something like a To Love Ru or a harem series. All these girls keep being added. Raku hasn't really done anything important in years, not since the Christmas arc with Chitoge. And I mean, I don't think I'm being too selfish to say I want to see it be that good again. I mean, even at the Goddess Hunter and Kami no Mi, I mean, it never got that good again, but I never felt like there was a huge drop in quality. This is how I feel.
It's just like the base premise of Nisekoi doesn't allow for a very long-form plot. So, like, Nisekoi could solve its plot, run for 50 chapters, and then be over, and then we might never see Kominaoshi in a published magazine ever again. Like, that's not a good thought to me. Like, I want to see more Kominaoshi. Like, I don't want him to fall off the face of the earth, because I was really scared that's what had happened after Double Arts.
Yeah. I think there's a disconnect there as well. How familiar are you, Michael, with his previous works?
I've read Double Arts. I haven't really read too many of his one-shots.
I highly recommend anyone reads them. He is brilliant. I don't think anyone was saying that it should be a stepping stone in the sense that, oh, none of this matters, because it does matter. It's what we're all reading right now. It's what we conceivably could be reading for years to come. But it's just that I respect him so deeply. I admire his writing style. I feel that he is different. Stepping stone is the wrong word. I want Nisekoi to be good as its own work, but I also want him to succeed with it for a long enough time to where he is afforded the chance to get another work. And on the notion that it should be a shorter series, that's kind of, it's weirdly enough the same argument in a different way regarding, the benefits now versus the benefits of the future, short-term gain versus long-term gain. Imagine Nisekoi was a short series. Imagine it ran for like 50 chapters and then ended. Maybe it would have done very well. That's kind of weird to think about, that short form of a shonen romance at least. But let's hypothesize for a second. Pretend that Nisekoi was like 50 chapters or so, roughly, and it was very good. Fair enough. Okay. It's going to end. There might be a little bit of an interim period. Some other romantic comedy comes in to jump. Well, what are we going to say about that one? It should then just be the stereotypical run forever, achieve nothing? Of course we're not going to suddenly turn around and say that. So we're going to say the same thing about that. Let's hypothesize that that one also runs for like 50 chapters or something, and it's a good standalone series and whatnot. Short-term gain on both of those cases. Let's say there's even a third, we can say short-term gain in all three of those cases. Fair enough. But then aren't we going to get incredibly tired of the one thing that we care about now? What we're tired of right now is the filler in between. And I use the filler, I hope you understand the context. Obviously, filler in the anime context is a totally different thing. But I mean the padding in the middle of the story where the main plot is not being addressed directly. We're tired of that right now. We're tired of seeing it not really go anywhere because the central story premise is so cool. If you take all of that out of it and you just have one immediate little self-contained romance, a romance plot, we're going to get tired of romance. Then we're going to get tired of the central idea. I think that's even worse.
How will we get tired of romance if we don't have the filler?
Because
I'm sorry. Yeah, Mister.
Repeatedly. How many different ways can you tell the story of boy falls in love with girl, realistically?
I would say the entire shoujo medium is based on that, answering that question, but I do understand what you're saying.
Now, I wasn't arguing that it should be shorter. It's just that I don't like the direction the writing has taken, even though I do still enjoy reading it, like I said.
Well, yeah, and I mean, we should clarify. I don't think any one of us here is trying to say, I love the fact that he's not progressing with the Locket story. I think that's missing the point. It's just, what degree of tolerance do you have for this, and what is your interpretation of the kind of series that it's trying to be? But yeah, I mean, I hope I'm not speaking incorrectly for anyone, but I don't think any of us is satisfied with meandering like that.
Well, if I may just add a little quip. My issue with Nisekoi was it actually goes a little more beyond that. I mean, because from the moment that I noticed that there was going to be a Locket story, I kind of envisioned it turning into what it is right now, which is more or less, adding more and more characters. Because I mean, that's generally the way that this kind of thing goes, and it seems to be more or less the case with what seems to be deemed harem series. Generally when you have more than two girls, it kind of just started with Chitoge and Onodera, and then it kind of just snowballed on its way there. And you have the plot conceits like this that kind of lend themselves to that kind of thing. So that's initially what turned me off of reading it past the first chapter. And you kind of have this issue with whether he needs to continue adding more things just to make it last longer, or if he can just roll with the same crew, which obviously at some point is going to get tiresome. So in order to keep the series going, you add more girls, or it gets to the point where the series is now. And generally, that kind of plot contrivance isn't exactly my thing. So I would say that kind of beyond that, I'm not entirely too fond of the whole Locket issue either.
That's a fair point. It's just it's a tough situation, because I think that what maybe some of us are looking for is just something that we can't reasonably expect out of a shonen. I mean, I've talked to a lot of fans of series like this in the past, where they'll say the similar sorts of things that we're saying right now, where it's something along the lines of, oh yeah, I'm really liking it still. I mean, it's fun, it's a minimum of enjoyable, but boy, I really wish it was taken a little more seriously. I wish there was a little bit more maturity. Why is it that it's always about the relationship starting, and that's the ending point of the series? Why can't we have, they fall in love, and then they are in love together as a couple, and then there are difficulties? And those are all valid points, but then you have to start to examine, remind yourself what demographic you're reading. We're all outside of the target age range, and that's perfectly fine that we still read and enjoy shonen. That's great, but the people who are actually buying the magazines, the people who are responsible for the fact that these series are actually getting a chance to publish whatsoever, they aren't looking for that. And so then it comes the time where if that's what you want out of romance, you need to graduate to a different demographic, because we're never going to see in shonen a series that is both dealing with mature relationship issues and is also successful. It can be one or the other, but it's not going to be both.
It's pretty rare, but it's funny you mentioned this stuff because I've read a couple of shoujo series recently where the main couple is a couple within the first 10 chapters, and it stays that way for like 3 years of publication at least. So it's kind of funny that there's that huge difference. In shonen, it's always will they, won't they, and in shoujo, it sometimes starts immediately.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's a difference in demographic. Neither one is better than the other. It's just what is their target audience looking for, and you occasionally see variances in either one. I can think of one that's certainly not a pure romance series, but romance is a central element. Magico, they were together right away, and that series didn't do too well.
That was unfortunate. I liked Magico.
Oh, I loved it. Yeah, I agree.
Well, there's another series I can think of off the top of my head that has the couple getting together in chapter 1, and that's Bakuman. But the only reason that did particularly well is because the focus wasn't completely on it. It was mainly just used as like a device in the story and for the character interaction in order to move along a completely different plot. I haven't actually read Magico, so I'm not sure how they handle it, but I assume it's not quite like this.
You say they got together in the first chapter of Bakuman. What they did was agreed to get together eventually.
That is one way. There is also the other two. It's been a while. I forget the names, but the other couple of the series that actually does. Right. Yeah. They're a bit more of a traditional couple, I thought, as far as much as traditional as you can get in a series like Bakuman.
Well, side characters, you have rights that main characters do not. For most of the part, they can die, they can fall in love, they can do whatever they want. They can get the best ending in the series, and main characters aren't always so lucky.
Have any of you read Love, Roma?
No.
Love
Roma. It's Love, R-O-M-A. That's I think it's shonen. It's the only series I can think of where the couple is a couple chapter 1.
Well, I mean, Magico, but...
Oh, well, besides Magico, but Love, Roma is a traditional high school series, so it...
Seinen.
But that was Seinen, really?
Yep. Published in afternoon.
Jeez. Well, that was a pretty cartoonish Seinen series, I'll say that.
I want to interject this because it's a really interesting thought from Bob Squab. First of all, I do want to catch up real quick, though. 2 great tweets. Well, first of all, Samu says, Onodera best girl. Fair enough. I do love this because I made a comment before the show roughly the same. In other news, Michael looks like a Bond villain with those intense shadows. I agree. Do you have a white cat that you could just pet right here?
I have a hoodie I can pretend is a cat.
You borrow my cat.
I'll set you up. Do you expect me to talk?
No, I expect you to agree to my opinions.
So it's the same thing.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, Bob Squab here with a very, very interesting thought, suggesting, here's what I think would make Nisekoi really interesting. Have Onodera confess to Raku, then don't end the series. Then have Onodera and Raku attempt to date while Raku and Shitoge still have to pretend to be a couple. Is that feasible in shonen, based on the stuff I was just talking about, like the more mature or the more at least developed romantic aspects you usually see outside of shonen? Could a shonen series do that and retain the same level of readership?
I think it could, based on Kimi no Iremachi.
I don't see why it couldn't. I mean, that sounds like an interesting idea for a series.
It seems just like a more of an expansion of what it's doing now. There would still be similar kind of humor. I could imagine Mariko would still be trying to steal Raku, just now from 2 completely different girls. It almost wouldn't change the dynamic that much.
Yeah. It's interesting. Kimi-Machi is an interesting comparison because it's so much more serious. And because it runs in magazine, or ran in magazine, I should say, because Seo Koji runs in magazine, and he does the same thing in all of his different series. He's going for a slightly more mature look on romance, so you get the characters sleeping together, you get a lot more skin shown, a lot more fan service. So the intended goal is different. But that said, I mean, that's not a bad point to make, Clint. I think, I mean, I guess it would just all be in the execution and interpretation. I mean, suddenly, because it's a more developed relationship, it's not as though you would have to get serious or have them, suddenly talking about like future marriage plans or something, like really, really in-depth relationship stuff. It could just still be just as lighthearted.
I think like a major shakeup like that would really help the series. Just like it needs a twist. Actually, a twist would be good. So like, yeah, one of the girls confessing, like Raku actually dating one of the girls for a while. Obviously, that wouldn't be the end of the series. It would intend to go on, and he might, then decide that he's with the wrong girl and change his mind, and then we would have a whole arc about like how does he end the relationship.
I'm not sure that would work.
That'd be fun. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay. Just like that specifically, that is then getting more serious, and that's kind of the Kimimachi territory, which is perfectly fine. But I don't think you could blend the two with the kind of lighthearted, fun romp that Nisekoi is, and the whole like I need to get out of this relationship, which is a sad time for anyone, for the most part, I'll say. I'm not sure those would mix.
I would what was my thought? Well, firstly, it wasn't always really that lighthearted. If you're to go to the very beginning, it seemed like it was pretty serious. Again, it was a silly premise, yes, but
I was gonna say it can do serious. It is able.
Well, I mean, we say that whether or not it could be serious, but I mean, in order for presumably once it's going to get near its end, it would have to eventually get serious. They usually always do get serious when it needs to jump that get past that bridge.
And I don't think it really has to be much more than one chapter. I think if he winds up in a relationship with one girl for a while, the manga runs like that, and then decides that he doesn't actually love her. That's like one chapter where it's over, and then it goes back to being lighthearted. And then eventually the series would end with him, settling on, whoever he feels that he actually loves in the series. I think that the most cliche path would for him to go the entire series thinking he's meant to be with Onodera and then wind up with Chitoge. I think that's kind of what if everyone was going to say how would the manga conclude in the most like obvious fashion, that's what you would go for.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, I like your idea right there, but part of me is also worried about it because it seems like that if you tried to expand on that too far, you would more or less end up with the plot of School Days, where the protagonist like dates one girl and then another one or something.
I'm not saying he should have a threesome with 3 of the alternate characters and then get stabbed.
That would be funny though.
With Onodera, that would be hilarious.
I'm sure that's fanfic does exist.
Wanted. I really don't see it the same way, I have to be honest. I mean, I obviously respect your opinion, but like you say that it could just wrap up, their relationship didn't work out, ho-hum, end it in a chapter, go back to lighthearted. I don't see how that would work. The breakup in a manga is always melancholy, and I really do not feel this kind of a mood at all from this series. And then conversely, if you try to make the breakup feel in the tone that this series already has established, which is very fun all the time, even in the serious points, then the breakup won't have the credibility or the weight to it that it should have for such an important moment.
How do you feel about the chapter where we were confronted with Shu's feelings for the teacher?
It's still, I don't think that's even like a quarter as serious as a series like Kimimachi, which is the kind of thing that.
Well, I'm not saying it should approach Kimimachi. I think like you're drawing the wrong comparisons. I'm not like saying that it should go directly into its territory. I'm saying it should attempt a plot that's similar, but with its own style. And I think its own style can do that. I'm saying it's like within its own style, without like swapping the core of the manga. It is capable of approaching plots like that.
I agree, and I think the reason we had too many just purely comedic relief side chapters. That's why we don't remember when it gets mildly serious. Like I forget that girl's name, but the only girl that isn't interested in Raku, when her grandpa dies,
Very.
that's a relatively serious event. It doesn't approach like ultra angst like some other series do.
I still don't think that that's all that serious, though. I never. I remember all of the different occasions when the manga has done non-comedic. I guess I have to delineate here between serious, as in like depressing or sad for the characters, even if it's not overwhelmingly like angsty overall, and when it is that. I even taking all of those, like the actual plot advancement that's not intended as comedy at all, I really don't feel that it would lend itself to that. But I guess that's just agree to disagree. I don't know. What do you guys think on Twitter? Samu says there are some potentially dark hints and undertones regarding Marika's illness. Whether it goes into that or not is to be seen. Do you think it will? Do you think that's going to be... I mean,
Yeah.
obviously the author is going to go into it at all, but do you think it's going to be like a big deal?
It's going to be a plot point. Her plot is going to be a gut punch because her character exists for it. She is openly, like, the most open character about her feelings for Raku, and he does basically, like, granted it's his part of the manga to, like, ignore everything she does, but all of that, like, ignoring Marika from Raku has to be setting up, like, a huge tragedy with her. I'm not saying she'll die, but I think a hospitalization is kind of a foregone conclusion at some point.
There has been some foreshadowing with her. Like before, like that she knows a bit more about the events of 10 years ago than she's let on. And I don't think it's all been revealed recently. So there's more to go.
No, clearly. I mean, it's Chekhov's gun. You wouldn't introduce this without intending to follow through on it later. It's just how dark, if that's the word for it, do you think it's going to be? I don't think that bad. I mean, maybe a hospitalization, but again, it's going to feel like the quote-unquote serious episode of a lighthearted cartoon or something. It's not going to feel like an outright serious thing to me.
Yeah, I was going to say...
Unless she
personally-
dies.
Yeah.
That's going to be hilarious.
I was going to say personally, like, I could imagine like her potential hospitalization just being more like mostly comedy with just one or two serious pages, but then I realized the series just recently did a chapter like that with Raku, where he was hospitalized for I forget what, and like it turned out a bit like that in terms of comedic elements, but
Appendicitis, I think.
Yeah.
right, yeah, and I can't imagine they would do the exact same thing with Marika, especially if they spent this much time developing it. So I imagine they would have to be more serious with hers.
It could be anything at this point. I mean, you know, she's set up to have her own health problems. That could be it. It could also just be, you know, there's the quintessential character of like the I'm moving, or my family has set up some kind of betrothal where I have to be engaged to someone. Whatever it ends up being, she's the character for it. But yeah, I don't really feel that it's going to be like. I don't know. Does it not feel to you? Because the way that it feels to me is if it were to be that serious and I'm not saying Kimimachi serious or anything like it, but if it were to be as serious as you guys are suggesting, my instinctual gut reaction is that's jumping the shark. Like to me it wouldn't fit the series. You guys think that it would?
I think you're like juxtaposing it to like where the series is right at this moment, and it wouldn't jump from A to B. There wouldn't be like zero intervening space. It would be an arc to set it up. Like an entire arc where we're kind of prepared for something very serious or very sad to happen, and then into it. In the same way that like Hayate has serious arcs, had a very serious arc with Athena, but the Athena arc was an arc. Like we didn't just get like super serious, very sad chapter right away. There was definitely setup time for it.
Well, yeah, but the setup time came in the arc itself. My point is that it would have to be an entirely new thing. Based on the evidence that we already have, I don't have an inclination that it's going to go in that direction. You're referencing the Athena arc. We now know that he can do serious, but there were no hints before the Athena arc that the Athena arc was coming. I mean, like, okay, there were like the King's Jewel and like stuff like that, but I mean in terms of the tone of the series, we had no indication that like, oh, get ready, something serious is going to happen soon. And that's what I'm saying here. Like nothing that we've had, because you're basically just saying that you could do this in any series. You could say that about absolutely any series in the world. Like, oh, it could do a serious arc. Well, of course it could, but we don't have that proof yet.
But we have had setup. What kind of point are you making? Because we have had setup. We've had the introduction of Marika's illness as like a setup to show that maybe eventually we'll have an entire arc that's very serious. And like you're right in saying that Hayate didn't have any preludes into going into that. It just kind of happened. But like, isn't a serious arc more of a given if it's been set up?
I think we're coming at this from two different points. Is there set up for an arc where they deal with whatever this is, the illness or whatever it ends up being, where she's written out of having a chance in the romance, which that's just inevitable. I'm not saying that whatever the plot, the story events have. I'm not saying there's no room for those to happen. I'm saying the tone, the tonal shift that would then take place from that, I don't feel has been set up. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I feel like we have to leave some room for some sort of drama. It's like, it feels like you kind of say that basically if there was a breakup or anything like that, it would be too serious or it wouldn't feel tonally right with the series. Well, if there's never going to be any breakup or heartbreak, it feels like the plot can't really move forward.
Mm-hmm. I could only see this really happening as a very, very, very end of series type of thing, because I'm not sure how you could do that with a series like Nisekoi and then go completely back to comedy afterwards.
Yeah, I agree.
Introduce some boys and hook up the rest of the girls.
I mean, at the end of the day, like series that like rom-coms where they stay completely lighthearted the entire series are like Love Hina. And Love Hina ended with like all of the girls being happy on who what was his name, Keitaro chose. All of the girls were just like, "Great job, you did it." That's never going to happen in Nisekoi. Like the other girls are never like Chitoge. If Raku marries Onodera at the end of the series, Chitoge is not just going to be like, "Good for you guys, I'm happy." Like that's not in the cards. No. So even if it's the very last chapter, I mean, someone's going to get upset.
But I don't... yeah, I agree, but I like Tenri upset from Kaminomi. I don't think any more than that.
I think Kaminomi is a pretty good example of maybe the kind of drama this could have. Like, not exactly, but not like super duper serious, but like when the drama is introduced in that series, it's effective. So I'd kind of like to see something similar in Nisekoi at some point.
Well, yeah, look to Kaminomi, actually. That's a decent example. But we had whoever, let's see, Bob Squab suggests that your Hayate comparison is a good one, Clint. I think Nisekoi could get serious without becoming melodramatic. Hayate is a good comparison, actually, so yeah, definitely. Samu says Nisekoi is serious business. We are talking a lot about Nisekoi, that's cool. Yeah, like, to me, if we remember the lead up to the ending of Nisekoi, and by lead up I mean even the last couple arcs,
Do you mean Kaminomi?
Say what?
You said Nisekoi, I mean Kaminomi.
Okay, yeah, maybe I did. Remembering Kaminomi, the run-up over the last couple arcs, including the Goddess Hunt arc, and the entire point that I was making, I've said this a few times now, where the Goddess Hunt, the point of that was to elevate the girls, like to flesh them out into being more rounded characters, and then, you know, the subsequent everything that happened. So to bullet point the main ideas, the Goddess Hunt arc made the girls from just like conquest targets or whatever into actual meaningful characters that had their own ambitions and motivations and feelings and all that. And so then fast forward all the way to the very end of the series that we just read, and the scenes that we saw after Keima made his choice in the final chapter. Okay, he made it in the penultimate chapter, but we saw them in the final chapter, and the way that they were all reacting, and the conversation between Ayumi and Yui was kind of a little bit melancholy, but not that much. At Tenri's bittersweet little scene on the second to last page or third to last page or whatever it was, that's very much what I see out of this. Like, we're nowhere near that level of the girls in Nisekoi being as well-rounded of characters as they are in Kaminomi.
Well,
so
I mean,
think it's just kind of presumptuous to assume that that's going to happen.
Transpose how serious Keima eventually got with how comedic of a character he is at the base. And then think about the fact that Raku is much more of a straight man than Keima ever was. And think of the fact that like when he gets serious, it will be that much more serious of a situation. He is less comedic of a character. His character change, for it to be a change, is going to have to dip that much more into the serious side of things.
Sure. You again though, you could just say that about anything. My point is that we don't have the grounds to assume that these things are going to happen and work. I mean, Keima's transformation took a long time for that to happen, and he had, I think, far more immediate reason for it to happen based on his own circumstances of like having an actual plot target to kind of spin all these other things to happen.
Here's a thought for you. One of the impetuses for Keima changing was the first very serious thing that happened was when Kanon was stabbed.
Yeah.
That was the kind of thing. Well, Marika being hospitalized is a very close proxy to that sort of thing.
I guess. I mean, Kanon wasn't like a laugh-a-minute character. Marika's basically purely comic relief so far.
I mean, you gotta kick the puppy.
Okay, so that's it then. That's what we're doing. Nisekoi, the revenge. Rao comes in and just like slaughters half the girls, and it's all like a gritty quest for revenge. I like it.
I think we can trust the author to, if there's drama, implement it pretty well.
With Rao stabbing people with his hand.
The question is, which girls?
Ooh, who would die? Who would you kill first to achieve that?
Well, I mean,
The short one who doesn't actually help. What's her name?
Little sister.
The assassin. No, not the sister. The
Oh.
assassin.
Paul McCoy.
Kill her.
well, I mean, it's over before it begins because Sugumi kills Rao. So
Ooh, that's a good point. Another one.
That's how it ends. That's not how it starts. That's how it ends.
That's the end of the series.
Wait, no, the only way for that to work is if Rao kills Chitoge. So that's how.
Okay. All right. Before we finish up, not just the topic, but indeed the entire show, Bob Squab again tweeting in to say, I'm curious how Onodera would react to a Chitoge ending. I hope she at least gets a chance instead of just fading away. Is that the assumption? What do you guys think? Clint, you said it, and I agree with it. Whether or not he deviates away from it, I think the expected ending is it's supposed to be Onodera, but he goes for Chitoge because he's grown close to her. Is that what you guys think as well?
That's the obvious ending.
Yeah, it seems to be where they're going.
The problem I like most of the characters. The problem with Onodera is that her relationship with Raku has not changed in the slightest since Chapter 1. It's changed with Chitoge, it was changed with Sugumi, it's changed a bit with Marika, but Onodera stayed pretty much the exact same character the whole series, and not much development has gone on there.
Well, that's her role. That's the problem.
Yeah, the fact is she's Japan's darling. She's the perfect girlfriend for, the Japanese audience. So they can't change her, or else she won't be that anymore. It's like that's where she fits in. She is the top of the rankings character.
Yeah. I mean, every single series like this has the default choice. It's the childhood friend. It's the one that I've had my eye on all this time until, whoa, who just came into my life? But this new girl shaking everything up. And so honestly, it's weird to say this, and I don't mean it literally, but effectively, Onodera is kind of incidental to the story. Of course she's a meaningful character. I'm not saying she isn't, but she's not even remotely close to being as important. She is not central to the real plot. She is a concept more than she is a meaningful character.
Yeah, she's the ideal, sort of, and all the other girls are the variations.
Samu, chiming in also on the subject, Nisekoi is what the author probably intended, but Onodera, I think... Yeah, okay, I read that wrong, my bad. Chitoge is what the author probably intended. I would imagine Nisekoi is what the author of Nisekoi intended to write. Chitoge is what the author probably intended, but Onodera has always been more popular, so it depends which way he goes. Yeah, do you think that? Let's close on this, because that's a nice neutral question. Do you think that he is the kind of author that will be swayed in any way by rankings, popularity, fan support, that one nut that spent $10,000 voting for Marika? Or do you think he's going to be influenced at all by the way that the series is interpreted and experienced by its audience? Or does he have one vision and he's going to stick to that?
I think he's going to tell the fans tough luck. It's my story, and I'm writing it how I intended to do it.
I think the ending will always stay the same. It's the chapters preceding that. Like, I assume like most people, I assume this is normal where if a character is popular, they write more standalone chapters about them.
Yeah.
I don't think he'll be influenced by what fans think. I think he may be more influenced by how the story seems to be flowing. And it makes sense. Like, for example, I was thinking about recently, like, we would all agree there's very small chance Raku will end up with Tsugumi. But a series in which he does end up with Tsugumi, I was thinking it would actually be a pretty dang interesting series to read. So, for example, something like that could happen if he decides in the flow of writing it that's what should happen. But
Do any of the girls, aside from Onodera and Chitoge, have a chance at all?
No. Not even
No.
No. There's just no way.
I mean, that's what we've been talking about, right? Like, every single argument we've had comes down to it's either Onodera or Chitoge.
And that's the
If
whole
any other
problem.
girl wins, I would count that as a twist ending, like Twilight, like M. Night Shyamalan level twist.
Yeah, that's the entire crux behind the entire argument that we all talk about. Like all the complaints that you have, Michael, about, oh, it's just meandering. Well, what do you mean meandering? Which chapters are meandering? It's the chapters in which other girls are introduced. Well, why is that? If they had an actual chance, it wouldn't feel like padding. It's because these other girls, every other girl except for Chitoge and Onodera, does not have a chance in hell. If Tsugumi, if Paula, if the little sister Haru, I think her name is, if Yui, if any of these girls had a chance, we wouldn't have talked about this for like an hour. It's simply down to that fact. Or
I
not.
just like him to introduce a twist that isn't, oh, I also knew you when you were a kid. You forgot this too.
Samu, I mean, even Marika overtook Chitoge in the rankings in the recent popularity poll. Yes, but I would suggest that that's temporary. These things fluctuate, but Chitoge is always going to be right up there. She may not always be the top of the girls, but she will always be right near the top of the girls. Bob Squab, clearly we're going towards a Haru ending. Fair enough. You called it. I'm taking note of that. Alright, it's pretty much 9 o'clock, almost, and we went a lot longer than we expected. Fortunately, actually got some good conversation about that on Nisekoi, which we don't get to talk about too much, so I'm glad we did. Anything else before we're done, guys?
I finished Bloody Monday.
Oh, yeah.
Well, season 1, but
Oh, okay. How'd you like it?
yeah, it was a really good story. Unfortunately, the character list on Mal wasn't very comprehensive, so I couldn't do the thing I wanted, where I actually go through every single character and count the percentage of women who are spies. I imagine somewhere close to 75 to 80%.
It's 100%. It's just not all of them blow their cover within the series. There you go.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense, actually.
It's a fun series. I like that. I love the twist at the end, too. I thought it was really well done.
Oh, sorry, which series is this?
Bloody Monday. It's a Shonen Magazine terrorism series.
Hmm.
But
So,
good.
complete side note, Kadokawa has bought From Software, so I'm looking forward to the Kantai Collection Dark Souls crossover.
Can't wait. All right, I think we're about done. So, yeah. Thanks a lot for watching, everyone. We'll be back on Monday, assuming we can cobble together a show. I mean, with Golden Week and with how hard it's been to find stuff to talk about, maybe not. But assuming we'll be able to find something to babble on about, then we will do a show on Monday. Again, Friday stream next week. I don't see any reason why we couldn't. There will actually be manga to talk about by that point. So, yeah, cool. Thanks a lot, guys, as always. Thank you very much for the interaction on Twitter, and to the 4 of you, thanks very much. Appreciate it all, as always. So take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.